joining us with upcoming historical fiction novels. And today I'm here with the legendary KATE QUINN, who I've spoken with before, and I love when she's here because I love everything she's ever written. Alice Network and The Huntress just won me over 100%, and I'm with you for good.
Thank you so much for having me. Really, it's delightful to be able to, be invited into your virtual living room.
I'm so glad you could be here. So Kate's book is out in March, so we're going to talk about it today, and so you can all go and pre-order, and the link will be right here on the video, on the bottom of the video, so you can click through there and pre-order the book, The Rose Code. I'm going to read Kate's bio, and then the synopsis, and then it's over to you, Kate. So KATE QUINN is a New York Times and USA Today best-selling author of historical fiction. A native of Southern California, she attended Boston University, where she earned a bachelor's and master's degree in classical voice. She wrote 4 novels in the Empress of Rome saga and 2 books in the Italian Renaissance before turning to the 20th century with the Alice Network and The Huntress. And now, the most eagerly awaited historical fiction novel of the year, The Rose Code. All have been translated into multiple languages. Kate and her husband now live in San Diego with 3 rescue dogs.
And I cannot guarantee you, just as a warning, that one or more of those dogs will not interrupt me at some point during this podcast.
You just bring them all in. We love dogs.
Well, as you know, it's a dog's world. I just happen to be working in it.
Exactly.
So they may come and reclaim their office at some point.
That's good. Mine's always sleeping, so there's no problem there. All right, The Rose Code begins in 1940. As England prepares to fight the Nazis, 3 very different women answer the call to mysterious country estate Bletchley Park, where the best minds in Britain train to break German military codes. The vivacious debutante Osla is the girl who has everything: beauty, wealth, and the dashing Prince Philip of Greece sending her roses. But she burns to prove herself as more than a society girl and puts her fluent German to use as a translator of decoded enemy secrets. Imperious self-made Mab, product of East End London poverty, works the legendary code-breaking machines as she conceals old wounds and looks for a socially advantageous husband. Both Osla and Mab are quick to see the potential in local village spinster Beth, whose shyness conceals a brilliant facility with puzzles, and soon Beth spreads her wings as one of the park's few female cryptanalysts. But war, loss, and the impossible pressure of secrecy will tear the 3 apart. 1947. As the royal wedding of Princess Elizabeth and Prince Philip whips post-war Britain into a fever, 3 friends turned enemies are reunited by a mysterious encrypted letter, the key to which lies buried in the long-ago betrayal that destroyed their friendship and left one of them confined to an asylum. A mysterious traitor has emerged from the shadows of their Bletchley Park past, and now Osla, Mab, and Beth must resurrect their old alliance and crack one last code together. But each petal they remove from the Rose Code brings danger and their true enemy closer. That totally gives me chills. I love that synopsis. It's so beautiful. I can't wait. Mine's
tell me how it comes out. It sounds good.
Well, my book's already on pre-order, so hopefully everybody here watching is going to get right on that.
All right. Well, are you ready for me to read a little bit from chapter 1?
Over to you, yes.
All right. Now, I'd already explained this to my lovely host, but I do not have one of those ARCs that I can prop up really beautifully so you can see the cover, because I gave them all away in giveaways. So I will be reading off of the PDF from my screen, but it will look like I'm gazing searchingly into your eyes as I read. So I hope you don't find that off-putting. All right, here we go for the first bit from the Rose Code. Introduction. In the autumn of 1939, Hitler's advance seemed unstoppable. German military communications were relayed using hand ciphers, teleprinter codes, and above all, Enigma machines, portable cipher devices that scrambled orders into nonsense so they could be relayed via Morse code over radio transmitters, then unscrambled in the field. Even if the scrambled orders were intercepted by the Allies, no one could break the encryption. Germany thought Enigma was unbreakable. They were wrong. Now moving on to chapter 1, or rather the prologue. November 8th, 1947, London. The enigma arrived in the afternoon post, sealed, smudged, and devastating. Osla Kendall stood, 26 years old, dark-haired, dimpled, and scowling, in the middle of a tiny Knightsbridge flat that looked as if it had been bombed by junkers, wearing nothing but a French lace slip and a foul mood as she looked at the piles of silk and satin exploding over every surface. 12 days until the wedding of the century, this morning's Tatler had gushed. Osla worked for the Tatler. She'd had the right the whole ghastly column. What are you going to wear? Osla picked up a rose satin gown whorled with crystal beading. What about you? She asked it. Do you say I look simply smashing? I couldn't care less that he's marrying someone else? Etiquette lessons at finishing school never touched that one. Whatever the outfit, everyone in the congregation would know that before the bride came along, Osla and the groom were, well, a knock sounded. Osla flung on a robe to answer it. Her flat was tiny, all she could afford in her Tatler's salary if she wanted to live alone and be close to the center of things. Darling, no maid? No doorman? Her mother had been appalled. Move in with me until you find a husband. You don't need a job. But after sharing bedrooms with billet mates all through the war, Osla would have lived in a boot cupboard as long as she could call it her own. Post come, Miss Kendall. The landlady's spotty daughter greeted her at the door, going at once to the rose gown slung over Osla's arm. Ooh, are you going to wear that to the royal wedding? You look scrummy in pink. It is not enough to look scrummy, Osla thought, taking her bundle of letters. I want to outshine a princess, an actual born-to-be-tiara princess, and the fact is, I can't. Stop that, she told herself as soon as she'd shut the door, and the landlady's daughter. Do not fall in the dismals, Osla Kendall. All over Britain, women were planning what they'd wear for the most festive occasion since VE Day. Londoners would queue for hours to see the flower-decked wedding carriages roll past. And Osla had an invitation to Westminster Abbey itself. If she wasn't grateful for that, she'd just be just like those ghastly Mayfair moaners blithering on about how tiresome it was attending the social event of the season. What a bother getting the diamonds out of the bank. Oh, woe is me to be so tediously privileged. It'll be topping, Osla said through gritted teeth, coming back to her bedroom and chucking the rose dress over a lamp. Simply topping. Seeing London swanning about in banners and confetti, wedding fever whisking away November chill and post-war gloom, the fairy tale union of Princess Elizabeth Alexandra Mary and her handsome Lieutenant Philip Mountbatten, formerly Prince Philip of Greece, would mark the dawn of a new age, hopefully one where ration laws were finally swatted down and you could slather all the butter you wanted on your scones. Osla was all in favor of ushering this new era in with a slap-up celebration. After all, she'd achieved her own fairy tale ending, by any woman's standards. An honorable term of service during the war, even if she could never, ever talk about it. A flat in Knightsbridge, paid for by her own salary. A wardrobe crammed with gowns and the latest go. A job writing entertaining fluff for the Tatler. And a fiancé who put a sparkling emerald on her finger. Don't forget him. No, Osla Kendall had no excuse to get in a blue funk. All the business with Philip had been years ago, after all. But if she could have cooked up an excuse to get out of London, found some way to be geographically elsewhere, the Sahara Desert, the wastes of the North Pole, anywhere, during the moment Philip bent his golden head and made his vows to England's future queen, Osla would have taken it in a jiff. Ruffling a hand through disordered dark curls, she flipped through the post. Invitations, bills, and one square, smudged envelope. No letter inside, just a torn sheet of paper with a block of scribbled nonsense letters. The world tilted for a moment and Osla was back. The smell of coke stoves and wet wool jumpers instead of furniture polish and tissue paper. The scratch of pencils rather than the hoot of London traffic. What does Klappenschrank mean, Oz? Who's got their German dictionary? Osla didn't stop to wonder who'd sent the paper. The old pathways in her mind fired up without a hitch, the ones that said, don't ask questions, just get on with it. She was already running her fingers along the square of scribbled letters. Visionaire cipher, a woman's soft voice said in her memory. Here's how to crack it using a key, though it can be done without. Not by me, Osla muttered. She hadn't been one of the boffins who could crack ciphers with a pencil stub and a little sideways thinking. The envelope bore a postmark she didn't recognize. No signature, no address. The letters of the cipher message were so hastily slashed it could have been anyone's handwriting. But Osla turned the paper scrap over and saw a letterhead block, as though the page had been torn from an official pad. Clockwell Sanitarium. No, Osla whispered. No. But she was already fishing a pencil stub from the nearest drawer. Another memory. A laughing voice intoning, "They have knelled your fallen ruin, but your ears were far away. English lassies rustling paper through the sodden Bletchley day." Osla knew what the message's key would be. Lassies. She bent over the paper, pencil scratching, and slowly the cryptogram gave up its secrets.
Oh.
Stonegrove 7602. Osla drew a breath as the words crackled along the telephone wires all the way from Yorkshire. Astounding how you could recognize a voice in 2 words, even when you hadn't heard it in years. "It's me," Osla finally said. "Did you get it?" Pause. "Goodbye, Osla," her old friend said coolly. "No, who is this?" She knew too. "Do not hang up on me, Mrs. Well, whatever your name is now." "Ooh, temper, Oz. Feeling out of sorts because you're not the one marrying a prince in 2 weeks?" Osla caught her teeth and her lip in her teeth before she could snap back. "I'm not faffing about here. Did you get the letter or not?" "The what?" "The Visionaire. Mine mentions you." "I just got home from a seaside weekend. I haven't looked through the post yet." There was a distant rustle of paper. "Look, why are you ringing me? I don't..." "It's from her. You understand me? From the asylum." A flat, stunned silence. "It can't be," the reply came at last. Osla knew they were both thinking of their former friend, the third point in their shining wartime trio. More rustling, a tearing sound. Then Osla heard a breath and knew that far away in Yorkshire, another block of code had come out of its envelope. "Break it. The way she showed us. The key is lassies." English lassies rustling papers through the sodden... Breaking off before the next word. Secrecy was too much a habit with them both to say anything significant over a telephone line. Live 7 years of the Official Secrets Act around your neck like a noose, and you got used to curbing every word and thought. Osla heard a pencil working on the other end and found herself pacing, 3 steps across the room, 3 steps back. The heap of gowns across the bedroom looked like cheap pirates' loot, gaudy and half-submerged in the wreckage of tissue and cardboard, memories and time. 3 girls laughing, doing up each other's buttons in a cramped spare bedroom. "Did you hear there's a dance in Bedford? An American band. They got all the new Glenn Miller tunes." The voice came at last from Yorkshire, uneasy and mulish. "We don't know it's her." "Don't be daft. Of course it's her. The stationery. It's from where she..." Osla chose her words carefully. "Who else would demand our help?" Pure fury in the words that came spitting back. "I don't owe her one bloody thing." "Well, she clearly thinks differently." "Who knows what she thinks? She's insane, remember?" "She had a breakdown. That doesn't mean she went loony." "She's been in an asylum nearly 3.5 years. Flatly. "We have no idea what she's like now. She certainly sounds loony, these things she's alleging." There was no way they could voice on a public line what their former friend was alleging. Osla pressed her fingertips to her eyes. "We've got to meet. We can't discuss this any other way." Her former friend's voice was full of broken glass. "Go to hell, Osla Kendall. We served there together, remember?" On the other end of Britain, the handset slammed down. Osla lowered her own with shaky calm. 3 girls and a war, she thought, once the best of friends. Until D-Day, the fatal day, when they had splintered apart and become 2 girls who couldn't stand the sight of each other, and one who had disappeared into a madhouse. Far away, a gaunt woman stared out the window of her cell and prayed to be believed. She had very little hope. She lived in a house of the mad, where truth became madness and madness truth. Welcome to Clockwell. Life here was like a riddle she'd heard during the war in a wonderland called Bletchley Park. If I was to ask you what direction a clock's hands go, what would you say? She'd answered, flustered. "Clockwise?" "Not if you're inside the clock." I'm inside the clock now, she thought, where everything runs backward and no one will ever believe a word I say. Except, maybe, the 2 women she had betrayed, who had betrayed her, who had once been her friends. Please, the woman in the asylum prayed, looking south, where her ciphered messages had flown like fragile paper birds. Believe me. There we go.
Oh, I love that. I'm so intrigued. I can't wait. That was beautiful. And you gave us a nice long sample of all 3 women, which I was hoping you'd do. I didn't know how it would work. So thank you very much.
No, thank you. It's the first time I've actually had a chance to look at that chapter yet. And you read for a while, and you reach that stage of editing where you think you know everything so well. You're so sick of the book. All you want to do is, never look at it again. So you don't look at it for a few months, and then you look at it again for the first time, and it's like, oh, I don't remember writing that. Huh? That's actually not total dreck. That's not terrible. You reach that it's not totally terrible stage. That I feel that's a victory.
That's the best part of it, going, did I write that? Good for me. I did that. Oh, I love all your books. When you wrote I forget when you first brought it up, but talking about Bletchley Park being the theme of it, I got all excited because historical freak nerds like us love anything to do with the codes and Bletchley Park. So how did you get into that? How did you decide to dive in?
Well, I've been wanting to write about the Bletchley Park women for a while. I love Robert Harris's book Enigma. It's a wonderful novel about Bletchley Park. And, there's the wonderful TV series Bletchley Circle, which is about the women of Bletchley after the war. And, they start solving crimes together. And I really wanted to, write something about the women of Bletchley Park because it seemed like that had not really been explored. There is a lot of nonfiction, especially about, some of these towering male figures that were there, men like Alan Turing and so forth, who absolutely deserved to be lionized. They did incredible work. But there wasn't really anything that I could see, anything major about the women of the park. And by the end of the war, this was this huge code-breaking facility that was spread out, across all these different locations in Britain, but all, sort of hiving around Bletchley. And about three of four were working there were women. So I really thought this is a story that really is yearning to be told. Yeah. And so therefore I had the idea of, I wanted to show as much as I could, what life at the park was like, what the different stages of the code breaking process were, and to do that through the eyes of three very different women who otherwise in the normal course of life probably would never have met each other, much less become friends, but they're all recruited to work at the park. And so therefore, when they are thrown into each other's lives, it has these huge consequences, not just for them, but for the war and for Britain and for a certain mystery about what happened that is going to unfold after the war in the days leading up to the royal wedding.
Oh, there's so much in there. It's so yummy. So that would take a lot of research where you pull in all the different facets, the code breaking, all the mathematical part of it, as well as the historical part of it.
Oh boy.
Because I'm the farthest person in the world from any kind of math. Crosswords I can maybe do, but anything to do with real puzzles, how are you with those?
Oh no, I can't do what they do. And it doesn't matter that I've researched it for 2 years, more than 2 years, and I've read number of books about it. I still can't tell you what it is that they did. And it doesn't matter how many times I watched a video, like on YouTube, or I read an explanation where there's some cheery Brit who's saying, well, actually, it's really terribly simple what we did. All you had to do was find the bigram and then, locate the lobster on the equivalent table and then, look for the matching crab that came in the Umperkvalt's, settable setting. And I'm just sitting there going, that is not simple, Nigel, and it's not going to be, no matter how many times you tell me it is. But the thing is, and I was actually discussing this with another writer on Twitter not long ago, is that what I finally realized, probably shortly before I went insane and ended up in a padded room in an asylum, was that it is not my job to become a subject matter expert and who is able and willing to instruct you on how to break World War II Enigma codes. I don't have to do that. There are actually plenty of nonfiction books out there. If you want to learn how, they will show you, and I will happily direct you toward them. But what my job is as a novelist isn't to teach you how to do this, how to break codes. My job as a novelist is to tell you, how did it feel to break codes, and to show that. So that's the line I tried to go for, where I understand enough of it to understand how it felt to the people who were doing this job. Yeah. And that's actually one thing I found fascinating about this, because, unlike my last few books, which dealt with women spies and women bomber pilots, women who were risking their lives on a daily basis, to do their war work, the women of Bletchley Park weren't risking their lives physically because they were, in this, lovely country house in the middle of nowhere in Buckinghamshire. And they had very little physical danger. So it's like I had to make, tension out, a tense story out of the fact that, a lot of scenes where there are women scribbling on little sheets of paper. And I'm thinking, how do I do that? How do I make that, exciting? Except the thing is that their mental work is exciting, and I find it exciting. And the thing about that is that it comes with a lot of stress and strain. I mean, breakdowns, crack ups, emotional fall aparts, that was pretty common at Bletchley because this work could be incredibly difficult. There was an incredible pressure, and the kind of mental strain that they operated under was its own kind of riveting. Absolutely. So that's really what I had. It sounds awfully, ghoulish to say I had great fun portraying that, but but I did, because this is something where really the danger and the effort is mental and it's intellectual. And that is the kind of thing I do find riveting. So I hope you will too when you read it.
And it's interesting the way you came from three completely different women. So you'd have to get into their mindsets in three completely different ways, but then merge them together, which I love. Are these real women? Were these the actual names?
There is some fictionalization going on, and there are some that are totally made up. My East End Londoner named Mab is very much made up, and I brought her in to she's going to work on the code breaking machines, like the bomb machines and the decoding machines. And she is very much made up, and I wanted to have her in there to show the machine part of the code breaking, which has become so famous. Like, when you look at the cover of the Rose Code, you'll see those little drums in the background. That's a bomb machine. And that's one of the most famous things associated with the park. And that's the kind of machine she works. My other girl named Beth who is a local spinster who lives with this very repressive family, and then slowly ends up spreading her wings as a cryptanalyst, which is the hardest job at the park, really. She is a composite of a couple of real women who I researched about. And one of those women was one who I didn't even know her name, but I found a story about her in my records where it was a Bletchley Park codebreaker who was confined to an asylum after supposedly an affair with a married colleague went south. She was confined to asylum because she had a breakdown, and they were worried she would spill classified information in her broken state. And so I thought, that is something that I can certainly do something with. I don't know what that woman's name was, but I can, fictionalize something along that. And then the other woman I based her on was one of the top cryptographic stars of Bletchley Park, who was, just this teenage schoolgirl who was doing the most incredible code breaking and who had this mind like a steel trap. And I borrowed a lot of her code breaking successes and sort of melded them onto a fictionalized character. And then as for Osla, who's my Canadian debutante and an heiress and, very much one of the privileged girls of Britain, made her bow to the king. She is lightly fictionalized from a real person. Mm-hmm. The real woman was named Osla Benning, but she was a Canadian debutante. She was this, absolutely delightful woman who was recruited to work at Bletchley Park because she spoke fluent German, like a great many, rich girls who were sent off to Austria or to Germany to finishing school, right, and to polish up some languages. So she spoke fluent German, and she was related to Lord Mountbatten and pretty much everybody. And she was sent to Bletchley Park to be a translator. And on the weekends, however, she was dashing up to London to see a certain Prince Philip, who was her wartime boyfriend. And they were really very, very, very close in the years before Princess Elizabeth grew up. She was still, really very young at this time, and caught Philip's eye after he and Osla had ended things. But there was literally a Canadian debutante who worked at Bletchley Park who dated Prince Philip during the war. And I fictionalized her just lightly because the real Osla Benning still has children that are living. And I would like to make it clear that my version is not, I'm not saying my version is their mother. Right. I am saying that this is my interpretation of their mother. And, there's a little bit of distance there. Yeah, but
that's neat. I didn't know there was a Canadian faction to this. That's great. That's exciting for me.
Well, I also was tickled by that. She was Canadian born and then came and lived in Britain. So she, thought of Britain as her country in terms of what she was fighting for. But, you know, Canada's contributions in World War II have always been, I think, a little bit overshadowed, and they shouldn't be. And so, and I've been to Canada on a number of, you know, author events, and I absolutely adore my Canadian readers who are just always so lovely. And so I thought, all right, I really like the idea of having this Canadian hero, and she is for you. So
thank you very much. On behalf of all of us, thank you very much. And I'm with you 100% on the Canadian, what we did in the wars has been definitely overshadowed. So working on fixing that. So, but that's amazing. I wanted to ask a little bit earlier, this is what, your 14th book, something like that?
I think so, something along those lines.
And one of them was an anthology, which I still need to read. But you've gone through way back when, like from the help me out here with the Empress of Rome saga. What do you think about?
I've written about first century Rome, and I've written about the Renaissance in the 1500s, and I've written about the French Revolution and various other ancient times. And then I jumped into the 20th century, excuse me, with the Alice Network and the Huntress with World War I and World War II history.
So do you have a favorite time period?
I really don't. It's they all have their unique, you know, difficulties and, you know, joys in terms of writing about in this time. And I do think it's easy after a while, you can start feeling a little tired of one period and you want to, you know, move a little bit away from it to something new. I mean, originally the reason I jumped from ancient Rome to Renaissance Italy was that I thought I was going to stab myself in the eye with a pencil if I had to type the word TOGA one more time. So I needed a break, and I took one to Renaissance Italy, and that was delightful. So I do think it's possible to get a little tired of one period, but, you know, I've done a certain amount of jumping around in my 20th century novels, you know, in terms of country and in terms of, you know, experience. And so I'm not feeling like the 20th century is necessarily gotten old yet.
Yes, well, good, because I'm ready for more. I just keep bringing it on. The one last thing I wanted to mention when I was on your website was your book trailers, because I love book trailers, and for all the books I've done before this one, I've sort of made book trailers, but they're not, I don't know, some people just don't like them. Some people say they're not worth your time and all that stuff, but I love making them. Do you make your own? Do you like doing that? And
no, I don't make them because I would never know how to make anything that pretty. I love my book trailers, and my publisher has done them, and I know there's a company that they use. The name escapes me right now, but they do a fantastic job, and they make it look like, you know, the trailer for some award-winning movie. And I'm just, yeah, that looks like a great movie.
I haven't seen, is there one for Rose Code coming out?
There should be. I'll check on that. I think we are going to do one, but I haven't seen it yet.
And last question, this book's going to be on audio as well as everything else, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I am really pleased that I have the same reader who read for the Alice Network and for the Huntress. Her name is Saskia Marleveld, and she is wonderful. And as soon as I had, you know, was writing this particular book and I had an idea when it was going to be finished, I was emailing her and I was like, I know you're on maternity leave. Is there any way you're going to be able to read this? And she's like, I will come out of maternity leave into the studio to read this book. I promise you. So she actually, I think not long ago, finished doing the recording for it. And I hope her voice lasted. It is a long book.
Hopefully she didn't go into labor in the middle of it and then have a different voice throughout. Thank you.
But I'm really looking forward to seeing what she does with it. She always does a great job.
For sure. I'm looking forward to that. I always listen to at least parts of the audio. I've got to read it myself, but I sure love to listen to the audio. There's a lot of beautiful voices out there. Thank you very much, Kate, for talking with me today. And I am going to put, as I said before, all the pre-order links and Kate's website. Everything is going to be on here, so you can go on there. And Kate, you're more than welcome to pop on the Facebook page anytime and say hello, because they're all going to want to come in and say hi to you. So,
absolutely. If you have any questions for me, just drop one on the Facebook page, and I'll be sure to try to get there and give you an answer.
Perfect. Thank you again.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.